It was December 17th, 2025 at 2:47 a.m. when a crushing, unshakable burden for the generations slipping through heaven's fingers drove me to a meadow filled with wildflowers just outside the city limits, and there, surrounded by thousands upon thousands of sleeping blooms, Indian paintbrush, lupine, black-eyed Susans bowing under the weight of midnight dew, Jesus stood at the meadow's center with tears streaming down his face that glowed in the moonlight, and he spoke 7 words that shattered everything I thought I understood about this season. They are running out of time, Jonathan. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it, but you've been marked. There's a reason this appeared on your screen at this exact moment. There's a reason you're still reading. Before we go any further, before I tell you what happened in that meadow, before I share the warning Jesus gave me specifically for those over 50, I need you to do something. I need you to type your prayer request in the comments right now. I don't care how long it is. I don't care how impossible it seems. Type it, because what I'm about to share with you isn't just a story. It's a divine appointment, and Jesus is standing in your room right now, looking over your shoulder, waiting to see if you'll have the courage to reach out to him. And if you're serious, I mean really serious, about your faith, if you're tired of lukewarm Christianity, if you want to be counted among the true believers, hit that subscription button right now. This isn't for the casual observers. This isn't for Sunday morning only Christians. This channel is for the remnant, the marked ones, the chosen ones who are willing to hear what the Holy Spirit is actually saying in this hour. Some of you know me as the actor who plays Jesus in The Chosen. That role has been the greatest honor of my life, but what I'm sharing with you tonight has nothing to do with acting, nothing to do with scripts or cameras or production schedules. This is real. This is raw. This happened to me 3 nights ago, and I'm still shaking from it. The temperature that night had dropped to 43 degrees. I remember because I checked my phone before I left the house. I didn't even grab a jacket. I was in sweatpants and a thin t-shirt, but I wasn't thinking about comfort. I couldn't sleep. For weeks, I'd felt this growing weight, this heaviness that settled on my chest every time I closed my eyes. It was like God was trying to get my attention, trying to show me something, but I kept pushing it aside, kept telling myself I was just tired, just stressed, just overwhelmed with work. But that night, December 17th, 2025, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I drove 15 minutes outside the city to this meadow I'd discovered months earlier while location scouting. During the day, it's breathtaking, acres and acres of wildflowers stretching toward distant hills. But at 2:47 a.m., under a 3/4 moon, it was otherworldly, the kind of place where the veil between heaven and earth feels tissue thin. I parked on the dirt road beside the meadow, killed the engine, and just sat there for a moment. The silence was so complete it had weight. No cars, no distant highway hum, just the occasional whisper of wind moving through the grass and flowers. I could smell the earth, rich, dark, alive with the scent of sage and wild herbs I couldn't name. The moonlight painted everything in silver and shadow, making the wildflowers look like an ocean of sleeping souls. I stepped out of the car, and the cold hit me immediately. Not just temperature, there was something else in that cold, something that made the hair on my arms stand straight up. I've learned to recognize that feeling. It's the same feeling I get on set sometimes when we're filming a particularly powerful scene, when it stops being acting and starts being something else. Encounter. I walked into the meadow. The grass was knee-high in places, soaking my sweatpants with dew within seconds. The wildflowers brushed against my legs, some still closed for the night, some eternally reaching upward even in darkness. I didn't have a destination. I just walked, my sneakers squelching in the damp earth, my breath coming out in visible puffs. God, what is it? I said out loud. My voice sounded too loud in all that silence, almost irreverent. What are you trying to tell me? What am I supposed to see? That's when I saw him. He was standing in the center of the meadow, maybe 50 yards ahead of me, and I knew. I didn't have to see his face clearly. I didn't have to hear him speak. I just knew with every cell in my body that I was looking at Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, standing in a meadow of wildflowers at 2:47 in the morning. Listen to me. I know how this sounds. I know some of you are already skeptical, already crafting your dismissive comments. But I've spent years studying him, portraying him, praying to him, and I'm telling you, this was not my imagination. This was not exhaustion or emotional manipulation or the power of suggestion. This was real. I stopped walking. My legs literally wouldn't move. He was wearing something simple. White, I think, though the moonlight made it hard to tell where his clothing ended and the light radiating from him began. But it was his posture that stopped my heart. His shoulders were shaking, his hands were covering his face. He was weeping. I've never, and I mean never, heard sounds of grief like that. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it carried across that meadow like the toll of a bell, and every note of it drove into my chest like a nail. This was the grief of someone watching something precious slip away, something that could have been saved but won't be, the grief of eternal loss. Lord, I whispered. He lowered his hands, and even in the darkness I could see his face was wet with tears that caught the moonlight and glowed, actually glowed like liquid silver running down his cheeks. Jonathan, he said, and his voice, God, his voice. It sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once, from the earth beneath my feet, from the sky above, from inside my own chest. Walk with me. He turned and started moving through the meadow, and suddenly my legs could work again. I stumbled forward, practically running to catch up to him. The flowers seemed to lean away as he passed, as if making room for something too holy for them to touch. The temperature around him was different, warmer, like stepping close to a fire. Do you see them? He asked, gesturing to the wildflowers surrounding us. Yes, Lord. Each one, he said, and his voice cracked with emotion. Each one represents a soul over the age of 50 in this nation. Look at them, Jonathan. Look closely. I looked. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Stretching away into the darkness in every direction, a vast field of sleeping blooms. They are running out of time, he said again, those 7 words I'll never forget, and they don't even know it. He stopped walking and knelt down. Jesus Christ, the King of Kings, knelt down and touched one of the wildflowers with such tenderness it made my throat tighten. It was a black-eyed Susan, petals closed tight for the night. This is Margaret, he said softly. She's 67 years old, lives in Ohio. She goes to church every Sunday. She tithes. She volunteers in the nursery. She considers herself a faithful believer. As he spoke, the flower began to glow from within, and suddenly I could see her, not with my physical eyes, but with something deeper. I saw a woman with gray hair pulled back in a bun, sitting in a church pew, singing hymns, smiling at her neighbors. A good woman, a decent woman. But she has never truly encountered me, Jesus said, and the pain in his voice was unbearable. She has religion, Jonathan, she has routine, she has tradition, but she doesn't have me. She prays to a concept, she worships an idea, she serves an organization, but she doesn't know me. She has never sat in the silence and let me speak to her heart. She has never surrendered the one thing I keep asking her for, the one thing she keeps hiding from me. What is it, Lord? I asked, my voice barely working. Her worthiness, he said. She has spent 50 years trying to earn what I already gave her freely. She is exhausted, Jonathan. She is tired of performing. But she doesn't know she can stop. She doesn't know I'm not grading her. She doesn't know I already chose her, already marked her, already sealed her, not because of what she did, but because of what I did. And now, his voice broke. Now she has less time than she thinks. And she's going to stand before me, having never experienced the abundant life I died to give her. The flower in his hand dimmed, and he stood up, looking out across the meadow. There are millions like her, he said. Millions. An entire generation that came to me for salvation but never came to me for life. They've been in church for decades, but they've never been in my presence. They know about me, but they don't know me. And the enemy has convinced them that's enough, that going through the motions is the same as walking in intimacy, that checking the boxes is the same as surrendering the heart. He turned to look at me, and the intensity in his eyes nearly knocked me backward. Time is shorter than they think, Jonathan. So much shorter. I didn't send you to that meadow by accident. I didn't lead you to create this message by chance. You have been marked to carry a warning to those over 50, those who are running out of time to experience what they've been searching for their whole lives. What do you want me to tell them, Lord? He reached out and touched my chest, right over my heart, and it felt like lightning and warmth and pressure all at once. Tell them I'm not interested in their performance anymore. Tell them I'm not counting their church services or measuring their good deeds or grading their prayers. Tell them I want them, all of them, the scared parts, the tired parts, the parts they've been hiding because they thought I couldn't love those parts. Tell them. He stopped and fresh tears rolled down his face. Tell them I've been trying to reach them. For years I've been trying to reach them. In the quiet moments, in the restless nights, in the inexplicable sadness they can't shake. That's me, Jonathan. That's me calling them deeper, calling them home. Not home to heaven, not yet, but home to my heart, home to the relationship they were created for. And most of them keep ignoring it. They keep medicating it with busyness. They keep drowning it out with noise. They keep explaining it away as stress or age or hormones. The wind picked up suddenly, moving through the meadow like a living thing, making the wildflowers sway and dance. The temperature dropped another few degrees, and I started shivering, but I couldn't look away from his face. Before 2026, he said, before this year ends, there is a window, a brief window, an opportunity for this generation to finally step into what I've been offering all along. But they have to choose it. They have to want it more than they want comfort, more than they want control, more than they want the approval of their religious communities. He walked a few steps away, then turned back to me. Show them another, he said. He pointed to a lupine, purple and tall, bending slightly in the wind. The moment he pointed, I saw another vision, a man this time. Late 50s, maybe 60, successful, nice house, nice family, respected in his community. But inside, God, inside he was dying of loneliness even though he was surrounded by people, dying of purposelessness even though he was busy every day, dying of a thirst that nothing could quench except the one thing he'd been taught not to expect: encounter, intimacy, the actual, tangible, life-altering presence of God. His name is David, Jesus said quietly. He gave his life to me at a youth camp when he was 16. He meant it. He really did. But over the years, the fire dimmed. Life got complicated. Church became a habit instead of a haven. Prayer became a checklist instead of a conversation. And now he's 58 years old, and he's terrified because he's starting to realize that something is missing, something crucial. But he doesn't know what it is or how to find it. Can he find it, Lord? I asked. Is there still time? Jesus looked at me with such fierce love it almost hurt to hold his gaze. There's always time while there's breath, he said. Always. But Jonathan, hear me. The enemy is working overtime to keep this generation distracted, to keep them comfortable in their spiritual mediocrity, to convince them that what they have is enough, because the enemy knows something that most of them don't. What's that? This generation, those over 50, those with decades of experience and wisdom and resources, if they ever truly woke up, if they ever truly encountered me the way I've been longing for them to encounter me, they would turn this nation upside down. They would be unstoppable. They have time. They have resources. They have influence. They have networks. They have authority in the spirit realm that comes from years walked with me, even if those years were walked at a distance, if they would just come closer. He spread his arms wide, and for a moment, the entire meadow blazed with light, every single wild flower glowing like a small sun, millions of them, an ocean of potential radiance. Then the light faded, and we were back in the moonlit darkness. But most of them won't, he said, and the sorrow in those words was crushing. Most of them will see this message and scroll past. Most of them will feel that tug in their spirit, that recognition, that quickening, and they'll ignore it. They'll tell themselves it's emotional manipulation. They'll tell themselves they're fine as they are. They'll tell themselves there's nothing more to find, and they'll be wrong. I was shaking now, from cold, from emotion, from the weight of what I was hearing. Lord, what do you want me to do? Tell them, he said simply. Tell them everything I've shown you. Tell them I've been trying to reach them. Tell them time is shorter than they think. Tell them there's a reason they're watching this right now, at this exact moment. It's not random. It's not algorithm. It's me. I've marked them. I've called them. And I'm giving them one more chance to step into everything they've been missing. The sky to the east was just beginning to lighten, the faintest hint of purple touching the horizon. Jesus looked toward it, then back at me. Come back tomorrow night, he said. Same time. I have more to show you. Things they need to know. Things about what's coming. Things about what's at stake. Will you come? Yes, Lord, I said without hesitation. I'll come. He smiled, the first smile I'd seen all night, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Then I'll be here, he said, waiting. And then he was gone, not fading away dramatically, not disappearing in a flash of light, just gone, as if he'd never been there at all, except the grass where he'd been standing was dry, completely dry despite all the dew, and the wildflowers he'd touched were still glowing faintly, tiny pinpricks of light in the pre-dawn darkness. I stood there alone in that meadow, soaking wet, shivering, crying, and I knew that my life had just changed forever. If you're still reading this, if you've made it this far, it's because you were supposed to. You're marked. There's something in you, maybe something you've been ignoring, maybe something you've been afraid to name, that recognizes truth when you hear it. Tomorrow night, I'll share what happened during my second encounter, what Jesus showed me about the specific obstacles keeping those over 50 from the breakthrough they need, what's at stake if they don't respond, and what the deadline really means. But right now, I need you to do something. Type, "I'm marked," in the comments if you feel that recognition, that quickening in your spirit. Not because I need to see it, because you need to declare it. You need to put a stake in the ground and say, yes, God has been trying to reach me. Yes, I want more than what I have. Yes, I'm ready. This message will reach who it's supposed to reach. But will you be one of them? I barely slept after that first encounter. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those wildflowers glowing in the darkness. I heard the sound of Jesus weeping. I felt the weight of his hand on my chest, that lightning warmth pressure that seemed to rewire something fundamental inside me. December 18th crawled by like a wounded animal. I tried to work. I tried to pray. I tried to process what had happened. But mostly I watched the clock, counting down the hours until 2:47 a.m., when I could return to that meadow and hear the rest of what he needed to tell me. I left my house at 2:30 a.m. The temperature had dropped even further, 38 degrees according to my car's dashboard. This time I grabbed a jacket, though I suspected it wouldn't matter. When you're in the presence of God, physical discomfort becomes background noise. The drive felt different this time. The first night I'd been driven by desperation, by that crushing weight I couldn't name. But now I was driving towards something, towards someone. The anticipation was almost unbearable, like a child on Christmas morning, except what waited for me wasn't presents under a tree. It was truth, raw, unfiltered, potentially devastating truth. I parked in the same spot on the dirt road, killed the engine, sat in the silence for a moment, my hands still gripping the steering wheel. My heart was racing. I could hear it pounding in my ears, could feel it hammering against my ribs. "Okay, Lord," I whispered. "I'm here. I came back. Show me what you need to show me." The moment I stepped out of the car, I knew this night would be different. The air itself felt charged, electric, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. But the sky was clear, stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black velvet, and that same three-quarter moon hanging low on the horizon, casting its silver light across the meadow. The wildflowers looked different in the moonlight this time. Last night they'd seemed peaceful, sleeping. Tonight they looked restless. The wind was stronger, making them bend and sway in waves that rippled across the meadow like the surface of a troubled sea. The smell was more intense too, that combination of sage and earth and something sweeter, something almost like honey that I hadn't noticed before. I walked into the meadow, and the wet grass soaked through my jeans within seconds despite my boots. The cold bit at my face, my hands. My breath came out in thick clouds that hung in the air for a moment before dissipating. "Jesus?" I called out, my voice swallowed almost immediately by the wind and the vast darkness. "Lord, I'm here. Where are you?" I never left. His voice came from directly behind me, and I spun around so fast I almost lost my balance. He was standing there, maybe 10 feet away, and he looked more solid somehow than he had the night before, more present. The moonlight seemed to cling to him, making him glow softly, illuminating his features with a radiance that had nothing to do with any natural light source. But his eyes, God, his eyes. They were red from crying, and even as I watched, fresh tears began to slide down his cheeks. "You came back," he said, and there was so much emotion in those 3 words. Relief, gratitude, love so intense it felt like being held and broken apart at the same time. "Of course I came back," I said. "Lord, you said there was more that this generation needs to hear, more about what's keeping them from—" "Come," he interrupted, reaching out his hand. "Walk with me deeper. There are things you cannot see from the edge of the meadow, things you'll only understand if you're willing to go further." I took his hand without hesitation, and the moment our skin touched, warmth flooded through me. Not just physical warmth, though that was there too. It was like every cold, numb, disconnected part of my soul suddenly remembered what it felt like to be alive. My hand in his hand. The creator of the universe and a broken actor walking together through a meadow at 2:47 in the morning. He led me deeper into the wildflowers, off any path, into places where the grass grew taller and the flowers more dense. My boots squelched in muddy patches, thorns from wild roses caught at my jacket. The wind picked up even more, howling now, making the whole meadow sing with this eerie, haunting sound. "Last night I showed you Margaret and David," Jesus said as we walked. "Two souls, two examples. But tonight I need you to see the pattern, the wall that an entire generation has built between themselves and the very thing they're desperately searching for." He stopped in a place where the wildflowers grew so thick they came up to our waists. He released my hand and turned in a slow circle, taking in the vast expanse of blooms surrounding us. "Do you know what the primary obstacle is, Jonathan? The main thing keeping those over 50 from the breakthrough I'm offering?" "No, Lord, tell me." "Pride disguised as humility," he said, and his voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before. Not anger exactly, but something close. Frustration born from watching people hurt themselves while insisting they're helping themselves. They have spent decades building their spiritual identity around what they do for me instead of what I did for them. And now, after 50, 60, 70 years of performing, the thought of admitting they missed something, the thought of admitting there's a whole dimension of relationship with me they never accessed, feels like failure, feels like wasted time, feels like humiliation. He knelt down and touched one of the wildflowers, a tall Indian paintbrush, its red-orange petals looking almost black in the moonlight. "This is Robert," he said, 72 years old, been a deacon in his church for 35 years, taught Sunday school, led mission trips, memorized entire books of the Bible. He's respected, he's established. Everyone comes to him for spiritual advice. As he spoke, I saw Robert, silver-haired, dignified, standing behind a pulpit with a leather-bound Bible in his hands, speaking with authority. "But Robert has a secret," Jesus continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "He's completely empty inside. He hasn't felt my presence, I mean really felt it, not just worked himself into an emotional state during worship, in over 20 years. He prays, but it feels like talking to the ceiling. He reads his Bible, but the words don't come alive anymore. He serves, but it's exhausting instead of energizing. And he's terrified, Jonathan. Absolutely terrified that if he admits this, if he tells anyone that the man everyone considers a spiritual giant is actually dying of thirst while standing next to the well, everything will collapse. His reputation, his position, his identity." Jesus stood up and I could see his jaw clenching, could see the muscles in his neck tightening. So he keeps performing, keeps pretending, keeps giving advice from a place of memory instead of a place of current connection. And every single day, the gap between who everyone thinks he is and who he actually is grows wider. Every single day, he drifts further from the very thing that could save him, admitting he doesn't have it all figured out and falling on his face before me in complete surrender. "Can he still?" I started to ask, but Jesus held up his hand. "Watch," he said. Suddenly, the entire meadow shifted. The wildflowers, the grass, the earth itself seemed to become translucent, like looking through layers of reality, and I could see something underneath. A vast network of roots, interconnected, tangled, some healthy and glowing with life, others withered and dying, and still others that were blocked, choked, strangled by something that wrapped around them like chains. "Do you see it?" Jesus asked. "What are those?" I pointed to the chains, the blockages. "Religious pride," he said flatly. "Self-righteousness. The conviction that they've already arrived, that there's nothing left to discover, no deeper place to go. It's a poison, Jonathan. A slow-acting, relationship-destroying poison, and an entire generation is infected with it without even knowing." He walked a few steps forward, and the vision beneath the meadow moved with us, showing me more roots, more chains, more dying connections. "They came to me once," he said, and now his voice was thick with emotion again. "They really did. Most of them had genuine encounters when they were young. They felt my presence. They knew my voice. They experienced that fire, that passion, that sense of being wholly loved and wholly known. But somewhere along the way, usually between 30 and 50, they stopped pursuing me and started pursuing information about me. They stopped seeking encounter and started accumulating knowledge. They stopped sitting in my presence and started working for my approval. He turned to look at me, and the pain in his eyes was excruciating. And now they're over 50, and their bodies are reminding them every day that time is running out. Their joints ache. They get tired easier. They've started going to funerals for people their age. They're thinking about retirement, about legacy, about what comes next. And underneath all the busyness, all the serving, all the religious activity, there's this whisper they keep trying to ignore. What whisper? I asked. Is this all there is? He said, and the words echoed across the meadow like thunder. Is this all there is? 70 years of church services and Bible studies and potlucks and mission trips and committee meetings, and somehow I still feel disconnected from the God I've supposedly been serving. Is this all there is? The wind suddenly gusted so hard, I had to take a step back to keep my balance. The wildflowers bent almost horizontal, and the temperature plummeted. I could feel it dropping, could see my breath coming out in even thicker clouds. That whisper is me, Jesus said, his voice rising above the wind. I'm the one asking them that question. I'm the one stirring up that holy dissatisfaction. I'm the one making them restless, making them question, making them wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's something they've been missing. Because there is, Jonathan. There is so much more. So much they were always meant to have. So much I died to give them. But they have to want it. They have to be willing to admit they don't have it yet. And that admission, that moment of vulnerability, is the very thing their pride won't allow. He knelt down again, this time touching multiple wildflowers at once, his hands moving from one to another like he was trying to wake them up. This is Sandra, 65. She's been leading women's ministry for 20 years, but she's dying inside because her marriage is cold and her prayers feel empty, and she can't remember the last time she felt actual joy. Another flower. This is Thomas, 58, pastor of a growing church. Everyone thinks he has it all together. He preaches about intimacy with God while privately wondering if he's ever actually experienced it. Another. This is Patricia, 71, grandmother of 12. Prays every morning at 5 a.m. like clockwork. Faithful, consistent, and completely, utterly burned out because she's been running on discipline and duty for so long she's forgotten what it feels like to be fueled by love. He stood up and I realized tears were streaming down my own face now, making cold tracks on my cheeks. Lord, this is devastating, I said. How do we reach them? How do we break through? Pain, he said quietly. The only thing that breaks through pride is pain, and that's what I've been allowing. The restlessness, the dissatisfaction, the growing sense that something is missing. It's mercy, Jonathan. It's me loving them enough to make them uncomfortable with where they are, so they'll finally reach for where they could be. He started walking again, and I followed, both of us moving deeper into the meadow. The landscape began to change. The wildflowers gave way to taller grass, to patches of rocky ground, to places where the earth itself seemed wounded, scarred. This is where it gets difficult, Jesus said. This is the part most of them won't want to hear. We came to a place where a massive boulder rose up from the ground, ancient and weathered. Jesus climbed up on top of it, then reached down to help me up. From this vantage point, I could see the entire meadow spread out below us, thousands upon thousands of wildflowers, stretching away into darkness in every direction. Time is shorter than they think, Jesus said, staring out at the view. Not because I'm coming back tomorrow, though I could. Not because they're all going to die in the next year, though some will. Time is short because there are seasons, Jonathan. Windows of opportunity, moments when heaven invades earth and everything becomes possible. Kairos moments. And we're in one right now, before 2026 arrives. Right now, in these final days of 2025. I am moving. I am speaking. I am reaching. The veil is thin. The Holy Spirit is calling. And those who respond, those who finally let go of their pride and their performance and their religious resume and fall into my arms like children, they're going to experience breakthrough that will define the rest of their lives and echo into eternity. He turned to look at me, and his face was intense, focused. But the window is closing, not because I'm closing it, because the season is shifting. The enemy knows this. He knows that if I can break through to this generation, if I can awaken them to the intimacy they were always meant to have, It will spark a revival that will shake nations. So he's working overtime to keep them distracted, to keep them comfortable in their dysfunction, to keep them convinced that what they have is enough. Lightning suddenly split the sky, not from clouds because there weren't any, but from seemingly nowhere, illuminating the entire meadow in stark white light for half a second. Thunder followed, rolling across the landscape like the voice of God himself. "I'm not playing games," Jesus said, and his voice had that edge again. "I'm not being dramatic for effect. I'm trying to save them from a tragedy they can't even see coming. The tragedy of standing before me one day and realizing they spent their entire lives in the outer courts when I was inviting them into the Holy of Holies. The tragedy of dying with their song still inside them. The tragedy of living 70, 80, 90 years as my follower without ever becoming my friend." He reached out and grabbed my shoulders, and it felt like being held by someone infinitely strong who was choosing to be infinitely gentle. "I need you to make them understand, Jonathan. I need you to tell them that I'm not angry with them. I'm not disappointed. I'm not grading them. I'm longing for them. I'm pursuing them. I'm creating divine appointments like this one, moments when they stumble across a message that seems to speak directly to their hidden heart, because I'm trying to get their attention. I'm trying to reach them before it's too late." "Too late for what, Lord?" "Too late for the abundant life," he said, and now he was crying again, tears flowing freely down his face. "I didn't come just to save them from hell, Jonathan. I came to give them life, life abundant, life overflowing, life that's worth living, but most of them are settling for existence, going through the motions, checking the boxes, playing it safe, and they're doing it in my name, which makes it even more heartbreaking because they think they're honoring me when actually they're breaking my heart." Another flash of lightning, another roll of thunder. The wind was howling now, whipping my hair, tearing at my jacket. The wildflowers below us were being beaten by the wind, bending and thrashing, and for a moment it looked like they were drowning in an invisible storm. "Tomorrow night," Jesus said, raising his voice above the wind, "tomorrow night I'll show you what happens to those who refuse to respond, what happens when the window closes and the season shifts and they're still holding on to their pride, still convinced they have it all figured out, still too afraid or too comfortable or too proud to admit they need more. Will you come back?" "Yes," I said immediately, having to shout now. "Yes, Lord, I'll come back." "Then meet me here," he said, pointing to the boulder we were standing on. "Same time, final night. It's going to be the hardest thing I've ever shown you, but they need to hear it. They need to understand what's at stake." He looked at me one more time, and even with the wind and the cold and the lightning flashing, even with the chaos swirling around us, his eyes held nothing but love. "You're doing well," he said. "I'm proud of you." And then he was gone, and I was standing alone on the boulder in the howling wind, shaking from cold and emotion and the overwhelming weight of what I'd just witnessed. I climbed down carefully, made my way back through the meadow to my car, and sat in the driver's seat for 20 minutes before I could even turn the key. My hands were shaking too hard. If you're over 50 and you're reading this, I need you to hear me. I need you to really hear me. Jesus is talking about you. He's talking to you. That restlessness you feel, that sense that something is missing, that question that keeps whispering in the quiet moments. Is this all there is? That's him. That's him reaching for you. That's him trying to get your attention. And he's not asking you to try harder. He's not asking you to serve more or give more or do more. He's asking you to stop, to surrender, to admit that despite decades of religious activity, you still don't have what you're actually looking for. And he's promising that if you'll just let go of your pride, if you'll just come to him with empty hands and an honest heart, he'll give you what you've been missing all along. Type "I need more" in the comments if that's you. If you're tired of performing, if you're exhausted from pretending, if you're ready to admit you don't have it all figured out and you desperately need him to break through. Tomorrow I'll share the final encounter, the warning about what happens if this generation doesn't respond, and the promise about what's available if they do. But tonight, just sit with this question. What if everything you've built your spiritual identity on isn't actually the thing he's most interested in? What if he wants something you've never given him? What if he wants you? December 19th, 2025, 2:47 a.m. I was already at the meadow when the clock struck. I couldn't wait this time. I'd arrived at 2:15, parked my car on that same dirt road, and walked straight to the boulder Jesus had pointed to the night before. The boulder where he'd said we would meet for the final encounter. The temperature was brutal, 34 degrees, and the wind made it feel even colder. But I barely noticed. My entire body was humming with anticipation and dread. For 2 days I'd been carrying the weight of what he'd shown me, and I knew that tonight would be even heavier. Final revelations, he'd said, ultimate warnings, consequences. I climbed up onto the boulder and sat cross-legged on its cold surface, my breath coming out in clouds, my hands shoved deep in my jacket pockets. The sky above me was extraordinary. The moon had waned slightly, but the stars were so dense, so bright, they looked like someone had spilled glitter across black canvas. The Milky Way stretched overhead in a luminous band, and I sat there staring up at it, wondering how anyone could look at that and not believe in God. The meadow stretched out below me in every direction, thousands of wildflowers still swaying in the relentless wind. But tonight there was something else, something I hadn't noticed the previous 2 nights. In patches throughout the meadow, some of the wildflowers were glowing faintly. Not many, maybe 1 in every 100. But they were definitely glowing, pulsing with a soft golden light that had nothing to do with moonlight or starlight. Do you see them? His voice came from beside me this time, and I turned to find Jesus sitting on the boulder next to me, his legs dangling over the edge, looking out at the meadow like a father surveying his children's playground. He wasn't crying tonight. His face was set, determined, like someone about to do something necessary but difficult. The glowing ones? I asked. Those are the ones who are responding, he said quietly. Those are the ones over 50 who are hearing my voice right now, in these final days of 2025, and making the choice to surrender, making the choice to let go of their performance and reach for intimacy, making the choice to admit they need more. I watched the glowing flowers scattered throughout the darkness, and my heart swelled with hope. There are more than I expected, I said. There are fewer than I hoped, he replied, and the sadness in his voice cut like a blade. Look at the ratio, Jonathan. 1 in 100, maybe less. Out of millions of souls over 50 in this nation who have given their lives to me, who have served me for decades, only a tiny fraction are responding to what I'm doing right now. Only a tiny fraction are willing to risk the discomfort of going deeper. He stood up on the boulder, and suddenly the wind stopped. Completely, utterly. The transition was so abrupt it felt wrong, like the world had taken a breath and forgotten to exhale. Every wildflower in the meadow stood perfectly still. The air itself seemed to be holding its position, waiting. Tonight I'm going to show you what I showed the prophet Ezekiel, Jesus said, his voice echoing in the unnatural silence. Tonight you're going to see the valley of dry bones. But these bones aren't dead, Jonathan. These bones are alive. They're walking around, they're going to church, they're serving on committees, they're teaching Sunday school, and they're completely, utterly dead on the inside. He raised his hand, and the entire meadow transformed. The wildflowers were still there, but now they looked withered, brown, dying. The golden glow that had lit up a few of them was gone. Everything looked drained of color, drained of life, like someone had sucked all the vitality out of the landscape and left behind only the husk, the form, the appearance of what used to be alive. This, Jesus said, his voice hard as iron, is what happens when this generation refuses my invitation, when they choose comfort over breakthrough, when they choose pride over intimacy, when they choose to keep performing instead of surrendering. This is the spiritual reality of what their lives become. I felt sick looking at it. It was death masquerading as life. It was motion without meaning. It was all the right actions drained of all the right motivation. But Lord, I said, my voice cracking, they're still saved, right? I mean, they gave their lives to you. They're born again. They're going to heaven. Doesn't that count for something? Jesus turned to look at me, and his eyes blazed with an intensity that made me want to look away but held me frozen. Jonathan, when did I ever say that my goal was just to get people into heaven? When did I reduce the entirety of redemption, the whole magnificent plan of salvation, to nothing more than a divine fire escape? I didn't die on that cross just to save souls from something. I died to save them for something, for relationship, for intimacy, for partnership, for the abundant life I promised. And when they settle for salvation without intimacy, when they settle for heaven without knowing me now, they're wasting the very gift I bled to give them. He jumped down from the boulder, landing in the midst of the withered flowers, and I scrambled down after him. Up close, the deadness was even more apparent. The flowers were brittle, breaking off at the slightest touch. The earth beneath our feet felt hard, cracked, thirsty. "Walk with me," he said. We moved through the dying meadow, and with every step I felt the weight of it pressing down on me. This wasn't hypothetical. This wasn't metaphor. This was the actual spiritual condition of millions of people. People I knew, people I'd worshipped with, people I'd served alongside. Jesus stopped at a cluster of particularly withered flowers and knelt down among them. "This is Margaret," he said, touching one. "I showed her to you on the first night, remember? 67, church every Sunday, tithes, volunteers, good woman." "I remember." "She saw your first video," he said quietly. "She watched it all the way through, and for about 20 minutes she felt something stir in her heart, that old longing, that sense that maybe, just maybe, there was more. She almost commented, almost typed, 'I'm marked, like you asked.'" Her finger hovered over the keyboard. He paused, and I could see his jaw clenching. But then she talked herself out of it. She told herself she was being emotional. She told herself she was fine as she was. She told herself that after 50 years of faithful service, she didn't need some YouTube video to tell her she was missing something. And she closed the browser and went to bed and drowned out that stirring in her heart with busyness the next morning. He moved to another withered flower. "This is David, 58. The one dying of loneliness, even though he's surrounded by people. He also saw your video. He also felt that quickening in his spirit, but he's too afraid, Jonathan. Too afraid of what it would mean to admit he needs more. Too afraid his wife would think he's having a crisis. Too afraid his pastor would think he's being led astray by emotionalism. So he ignored it, pushed it down, and the door that was briefly open closed." Jesus stood up and looked around at the thousands upon thousands of withered flowers. "This is what happens," he said, and his voice was thick with grief. "Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, over time, when people repeatedly ignore my voice, repeatedly choose comfort over growth, repeatedly settle for the familiar instead of reaching for the more I'm offering, they wither, their passion dies, their fire goes out, and they don't even notice it happening because it's so gradual. But I notice. I see every light that dims. I feel every heart that grows cold. And it breaks me." Lightning split the sky again, but this time it was different. Instead of white, it was crimson, blood-red lightning that illuminated the entire meadow in hellish light for 3 full seconds. And in that light, I saw something that made me gasp. The withered flowers weren't just dying. They were being consumed. Dark shadows moved among them, formless and hungry, feeding on the deadness, growing stronger from the spiritual apathy. "What are those?" I whispered, horror clawing at my throat. "Demons," Jesus said flatly. "Demons of disappointment, of bitterness, of cynicism, of religious pride. They feast on believers who have settled for less than I offered. They build strongholds in the gap between what I promised and what my people are experiencing. And this generation, those over 50 who have spent decades going through the motions, they're particularly vulnerable because they have so much history with disappointment. So many prayers that felt unanswered, so many hopes that seemed to die, so many times they reached for more and felt like they came up empty." The lightning faded, and we were back in the dim moonlight with the dying meadow surrounding us. "But it doesn't have to be this way," Jesus said, and suddenly there was fire in his voice. "It doesn't, even now. Even with time running short, even with the window closing, if they'll just respond, if they'll just take one step toward me in honesty and vulnerability, if they'll just admit they've been settling and they want more, I can resurrect what's dead. I can revive what's withered. I can breathe life into dry bones." He raised both hands toward the sky, and his voice rang out across the meadow with authority that made the ground tremble beneath my feet. "Ezekiel 37, he shouted, "prophesy to these bones. Can these bones live? Yes, they can live. They can live if they'll respond to my spirit, if they'll let me breathe on them, if they'll surrender control and stop trying to manage their own resurrection." And suddenly the wind returned, not the howling wind from the previous nights, but a warm wind, a gentle wind, a wind that smelled like rain and honey and new growth. It moved through the meadow like a living thing, touching the withered flowers, and wherever it touched, color began to return. Life began to return. But not everywhere, not all of them, only the ones that had been glowing before, that one in 100, maybe less. Those flowers lifted their heads, their petals unfurling, drinking in the wind like water in a desert. The others remained withered, untouched, dying. "Do you see?" Jesus said, turning to me with tears streaming down his face again. "Do you see the tragedy? The wind of my spirit is blowing right now. The breath of God is moving across this nation right now. I'm reaching, I'm calling, I'm breathing life. But only those who are open to it, only those who are positioned for it, only those who have made themselves available to it are receiving it. The others, the proud, the comfortable, the convinced, they've already arrived. The wind passes right over them, and they don't even feel it." He walked to one of the flowers that had come back to life, a lupine, standing tall and purple and glorious in the middle of the deadness surrounding it. "This is Sarah," he said softly. 63. She watched your video. She felt that stirring, and instead of ignoring it, instead of dismissing it, she fell on her face in her living room at 3 in the morning and wept. She told me the truth, that she'd been pretending for years, that she was exhausted, that she didn't know how to get back to the fire she used to have. And I met her, Jonathan. I met her right there on her living room floor, and I held her, and I filled her with my presence in a way she hasn't experienced in 30 years. She's marked now, truly marked, set apart, and her life will never be the same. He moved to another revived flower. "This is James, 71, widower. Thought his best years were behind him, but he responded. He surrendered, and now I'm about to use him in ways he can't even imagine. He has 15, maybe 20 years left on this earth, and they're going to be the most powerful, most fruitful, most joy-filled years of his entire life because he finally stopped performing and started receiving." Jesus looked at me, and his face was fierce with love. "This is what's available, Jonathan. This is what I'm offering to every single person over 50 who will humble themselves enough to admit they need it. Resurrection, revival, renewal, not in some vague future, not in heaven someday. Now, right now, in their final decades. In the years when the world says they should be winding down, I want to wind them up. I want to set them on fire. I want to launch them into the most significant season of their lives." He spread his arms wide, encompassing the entire meadow, the dying flowers and the living ones, the darkness and the scattered points of light. "But they have to choose it," he said. "I won't force it. I can't force it. That's not how relationship works. They have to want me more than they want comfort, more than they want reputation, more than they want to be right. And most of them," his voice broke, "most of them won't. Most of them will see this message and feel that tug and ignore it. Again. And the window will close, and the season will shift, and they'll keep withering. And one day they'll stand before me and ask why they never experienced the abundant life I promised, and I'll have to show them all the times I reached for them and they pulled away." Thunder rolled across the sky, not the violent thunder from before, but deep, resonant, mournful thunder that sounded like the grief of God made audible. Jesus sat down right there in the middle of the meadow, surrounded by dying flowers and a few living ones, and he put his face in his hands. His shoulders shook with sobs. And I stood there watching the Son of God weep over a generation that was running out of time, and I didn't know what to do except fall to my knees beside him and weep too. We stayed like that for what felt like hours. Maybe it was. Time moves differently in God's presence. Finally, he lifted his head and looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice hoarse. "Tomorrow you'll share the final part, the practical steps, the 30-day challenge, the specific things they need to do to position themselves for what I'm offering. But tonight," he looked around at the meadow one more time, "tonight I needed you to understand what's at stake. I needed you to see both the tragedy and the promise. I needed you to feel what I feel when I watch my people settle for crumbs when I'm offering them a feast." He stood up and I scrambled to my feet. "The biblical backing for everything I've shown you is everywhere," he said. Ezekiel 37, dry bones coming to life. 2, I will restore the years the locusts have eaten. 10:10, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. 11:29, the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter how long they've been withering. It doesn't matter how much time they've wasted. If they'll respond now, if they'll surrender now, I will restore, I will revive, I will resurrect. The sky to the east was beginning to lighten, that first faint blush of purple that precedes dawn. Jesus looked toward it, then back at me. "The sun is about to rise," he said. A new day, a new chance. That's what I offer them, Jonathan. Every single day, every single moment. A new chance to choose life over death, intimacy over performance, surrender over control. The question is whether they'll take it. He reached out and put his hand on my chest again, over my heart, and that lightning warmth pressure flooded through me. "You're carrying my heart now," he said quietly. "You're carrying my grief and my hope. Share it faithfully, share it boldly. Don't hold back because you're afraid of offending people or sounding too intense. The hour is too late for diplomacy. They need to hear the truth, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts, because sometimes pain is the only thing that breaks through pride." "I will, Lord," I promised. "I'll tell them everything." He smiled, a sad, beautiful, hope against hope smile. "I know you will," he said. "That's why I chose you." And then he was gone, and the sun broke over the horizon, flooding the meadow with golden light. The withered flowers looked even more dead in the daylight, but those few that had been revived, they were stunning. They practically glowed with health and color and life, standing as testimony that resurrection is possible, that it's never too late, that God can breathe life into anything if we'll just let him. I stood there in the meadow as the sun climbed higher, warming my face, and I made a vow. I vowed that I would not soften this message. I would not make it palatable or comfortable or easy to dismiss, because too much was at stake. Too many souls were withering, and too little time remained. If you're over 50 and you're reading this, I'm begging you, don't be one of the withered flowers. Don't be one who sees this message and feels that stirring and ignores it. Don't let pride or fear or comfort rob you of what Jesus is offering right now in these final days of 2025. He's reaching for you. The wind of his spirit is blowing. The breath of God is hovering over your life at this very moment. The question isn't whether he's moving. The question is whether you're positioning yourself to receive what he's offering. Type "I choose life" in the comments if you're done withering, if you're done settling, if you're ready to experience the resurrection he died to give you. Tomorrow I'll share the practical steps, the 30-day challenge that will position you for breakthrough, the specific actions you need to take. But tonight, just sit with this question. What if you're one of the dying flowers? What if you've been withering for years without even realizing it? And what if right now, is your moment to let the breath of God revive you? What will you choose? It's been 3 days since my final encounter with Jesus in that meadow, and I'm still processing everything I witnessed, still carrying the weight of it, still feeling the imprint of his hand on my chest where he touched me and said, "You're carrying my heart now." Yesterday, December 20th, I went back to the meadow in broad daylight. I had to. I needed to see it with my natural eyes, needed to confirm that it was a real place and not just some dreamscape my exhausted mind had conjured. I arrived at 2 p.m. The temperature was 56 degrees, sunny, a gentle breeze making the wildflowers sway in waves across the landscape. It was beautiful, breathtaking, but it was also ordinary. Just a meadow, just flowers, just earth and sky and the normal physics of daylight. And yet, as I walked through it, retracing the paths I'd taken with Jesus over those 3 nights, I could feel the echo of what had happened there. The ground where he'd knelt was still slightly depressed, as if the weight of divine presence had left a mark. The boulder where we'd sat together felt warmer than the surrounding rocks, even though the sun hit everything equally, and scattered throughout the meadow, not everywhere, but in specific places, certain wildflowers looked more vibrant, more alive, more present than the others around them. The ones he'd touched, the ones representing souls that had responded. I stood there in the afternoon sunshine, surrounded by thousands of flowers, and I wept. Not the desperate, broken weeping of those midnight encounters, but the quieter tears of someone who's been entrusted with something sacred and feels the weight of that responsibility. Jesus had given me a message, a warning, a promise, and now I had to deliver it. So here it is, the final part, the practical application, the specific steps that will position you, if you're over 50 and you're tired of settling, for the breakthrough Jesus is offering before this year ends and the window closes. But first, I need to tell you something that might sound harsh. Not everyone who hears this will do it. In fact, most won't. Most will read these words, feel that stirring in their spirit, maybe even get excited for a moment, and then nothing. They'll go back to their routines, their comfortable patterns, their familiar dysfunction, and they'll miss what could have been the turning point of their entire life. Don't be one of them. Jesus showed me the withered flowers, the ones who ignored his invitation, but he also showed me the revived ones, the ones who responded. And I'm telling you, the difference between those two groups isn't intelligence or spiritual maturity or decades of Bible knowledge. The difference is simple, raw willingness to admit you need more and take action on that admission. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Here's the 30-day challenge that Jesus laid on my heart during that final morning in the meadow as the sun rose and the world came back to life around me. The 30-day encounter challenge. Starting today, December 17th, 2025, you have until January 16th, 2026 to complete this. This isn't complicated. In fact, the simplicity of it might offend you. Your religious pride might tell you that surely something this straightforward can't produce the kind of breakthrough Jesus promised. But remember, it was a simple bronze serpent on a pole that healed the Israelites. It was a simple walk around Jericho's walls that brought them down. It was simple water that Jesus turned into wine. God specializes in using simple obedience to produce supernatural results. Here are the specific steps. Step 1. The surrender morning, 30 minutes daily. Every single morning for the next 30 days, you're going to wake up 30 minutes earlier than usual. I don't care if you're already an early riser. I don't care if you already have a morning routine. This is in addition to whatever you're currently doing. Set your alarm. Get up. Don't check your phone. Don't turn on the TV. Don't start your coffee maker yet. Go directly to whatever private space you have. Bedroom, closet, bathroom, backyard, garage. I don't care. And you're going to do something you probably haven't done in years. You're going to tell God the truth, not the sanitized religious truth, not the I'm blessed and highly favored performance, the actual truth, out loud, in your own words. No King James English, no trying to sound spiritual, just raw, honest, vulnerable truth about where you actually are. God, I'm exhausted. God, I don't feel your presence anymore, and I don't know if it's my fault or yours, but I hate it. God, I've been pretending for 20 years and I can't do it anymore. God, I'm scared that I wasted my life on the wrong things. God, I'm angry that you didn't answer my prayers the way I wanted. Whatever it is, whatever you've been hiding, whatever you've been too proud or too afraid to admit, you're going to say it out loud to him. For the first 10 minutes of those 30 minutes, you're just going to pour out everything you've been carrying. Then, for the next 10 minutes, you're going to sit in silence. Complete silence. No music, no prayer list, no Bible app, just silence. And you're going to wait. You're going to position yourself to hear his voice, to feel his presence, to receive whatever he wants to give you in that moment. This might feel uncomfortable. You might hear nothing for days. Your mind might wander. You might feel foolish. Do it anyway. Then, for the final 10 minutes, you're going to read one chapter of the Gospel of John, starting with chapter 1 and progressing one chapter per day. But you're not reading for information. You're reading to encounter the person. Every time you see the word Jesus or he, referring to Jesus, pause, look up from the page, and say out loud, "That's the same Jesus who's in this room with me right now." Make it personal. Make it present tense. Make it real. Step 2. The Pride Purge. One item per day. Every day for 30 days, you're going to identify one way you've been building your spiritual identity on performance instead of relationship, and you're going to confess it. Write it down. Say it out loud to God. Tell a trusted friend if you're brave enough. Examples. I've been using my Bible knowledge as a weapon to feel superior to other believers. I've been serving in ministry to earn approval instead of overflowing from intimacy. I've been judging people who worship differently than me because it makes me feel more spiritual. I've been maintaining an image of having it all together while dying inside. I've been angry at God for years but pretending everything is fine. This is going to be painful. Your pride is going to fight you on this. But Jesus was clear. Pride disguised as humility is the primary obstacle keeping your generation from breakthrough. You have to name it, confess it, repent of it, and ask him to replace it with genuine humility. Step 3. The Desperation Declaration. Post it publicly. This is the step that will separate those who are serious from those who are just curious. Within the next 48 hours before December 19th, I want you to make a public declaration. Comment on this video. Post on your own social media. Tell your small group. However you choose to do it, you're going to declare, I'm over 50 and I'm done settling. I'm done pretending. I'm done performing. For the next 30 days, I'm pursuing intimacy with Jesus like my life depends on it. I'm marked, I'm desperate, and I'm going all in. Why does this matter? Because public declaration creates accountability, because the enemy can't touch what you bring into the light, because there's power in testimony, and because Jesus said, "Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven." Your pride is going to tell you this is unnecessary, that your relationship with God is private, that you don't need to broadcast it. That's your pride talking. Ignore it. Step 4. The interruption fast, 1 week. Pick 1 week within the next 30 days. I suggest starting December 23rd, right at Christmas. And for that entire week, you're going to fast from something that's been keeping you distracted from God's voice. Not food necessarily. Unless God specifically tells you to do a food fast, I'm talking about fasting from social media, except for posting your testimony, television and streaming services, news consumption, your phone after 8 p.m., whatever else you compulsively reach for when you're uncomfortable with silence. For 1 week, you're creating space for God to interrupt you. You're removing the noise, you're making yourself available, and you're going to document what happens. Write it down. Notice what you feel. Notice what you hear. Notice how God shows up when you finally give him room to do so. Step 5. The Marked Ones Gathering. Find your tribe. You're not meant to do this alone. Within the next 30 days, you need to find at least 2 other people over 50 who are also responding to this message, and you need to commit to meeting with them at least once per week, in person if possible, over video call if necessary. These aren't normal Bible studies. These are vulnerability groups, encounter groups, places where you tell the truth about what's actually happening in your spiritual life, where you pray for each other with desperation, where you encourage each other to keep going when it gets hard. Look through the comments on this video, find people in your area, reach out, be bold, say, "I'm marked, are you? Let's do this together." Jesus sent his disciples out in pairs for a reason. You need witnesses. You need accountability. You need people who are pursuing the same thing you're pursuing and won't let you quit when your flesh wants to go back to comfortable dysfunction. Now I need to address something that some of you are thinking. Why the deadline? Why January 16th, 2026? Is God going to stop loving me if I don't complete this challenge in 30 days? Is Jesus going to give up on me? No, of course not. God's love is unconditional and his pursuit of you is relentless. But here's what Jesus made abundantly clear to me in that meadow. There are seasons, there are windows of opportunity, there are kairos moments when heaven invades earth and breakthrough becomes accessible in ways it isn't during other seasons. We're in one of those moments right now. Right now, before 2026 begins, the veil is thin. The Holy Spirit is moving, God is reaching, and those who position themselves in this season will experience things that might take years or might never happen if they wait. It's not about earning God's favor. It's about positioning yourself to receive what he's already offering. Think of it like this. The sun is always shining, but you only get a tan if you go outside during daylight hours. God is always moving, but you only experience breakthrough when you align yourself with his movement in the season when he's moving in a particular way. This is that season. These are those days. And the deadline isn't about punishment. It's about urgency. It's about not letting this moment pass you by. If you actually do this, if you complete this 30-day challenge with genuine desperation and honesty, here's what Jesus promised me you can expect. You will encounter his presence in ways you haven't in years, maybe decades. Not just emotional experiences, though those might happen, but a deep, settled knowing that he is with you, that he sees you, that he's pleased with you apart from your performance. Old wounds will begin to heal. Disappointments you've carried for years. Bitterness you didn't even realize you were holding. Grief you never processed. The Holy Spirit is going to do surgery, and yes, it might hurt, but you'll come out the other side more whole than you've ever been. You will rediscover your purpose. Many of you think your best years are behind you. You think you're just coasting toward retirement, toward irrelevance. Jesus showed me that's a lie from hell. Your final decades can be the most powerful, most fruitful, most joy-filled season of your entire life, but only if you'll let him redefine what that looks like. Your passion will return. That fire you used to have, that zeal, that sense of actually wanting to pray and worship and read your Bible because it fed something deep in your soul. It's not gone. It's buried. And this challenge will resurrect it. You will become dangerous to the enemy. Right now, if you're withering spiritually, you're not a threat to anyone. But a believer over 50 who's walking in genuine intimacy with Jesus, who's filled with his presence, who's operating from overflow instead of emptiness. that person is unstoppable. That person will change their family, their church, their community, their sphere of influence. And that's exactly why the enemy has worked so hard to keep you comfortable in your mediocrity. I'm going to be brutally honest with you about something. I can't make you do this. I can't force you to respond. I can only deliver the message Jesus gave me and trust that the ones who are truly marked will recognize his voice and act on it. Some of you are already composing dismissive comments in your head. This is manipulative. This is emotional manipulation. This is just Jonathan Rumi trying to build his platform. And you know what? That's fine. Jesus told me that would happen. He told me most wouldn't respond. He told me to share it anyway. But for those of you who feel that quickening in your spirit, who recognize that what I'm describing is the exact thing you've been longing for but couldn't name, who know that this message showed up at this exact moment because God orchestrated it. This is your moment. This is your divine appointment. And this is God reaching through the noise and the busyness and the religious performance and saying, come closer, let me love you, let me fill you, let me show you what you've been missing all these years. I went back to the meadow one more time this morning, December 20th, 2025 at 6 a.m. I wanted to see the sunrise from the boulder where Jesus and I had sat together on that third night. The sky exploded with color, deep purples melting into oranges and pinks and golds, clouds catching fire with the rising sun. And as the light spread across the meadow, it illuminated thousands of wildflowers, all lifting their faces toward the warmth, toward the source of life. Some were fully open, drinking in every ray. Others were still closed, still sleeping, still missing the very thing they were created to receive. And I heard his voice one more time, not audible but unmistakable, speaking directly to my heart. Tell them I'm the sunrise, Jonathan. Tell them I rise every morning with new mercies, new chances, new invitations. Tell them it's not too late. Tell them the light is breaking. Tell them all they have to do is open up and let me in. So that's what I'm telling you. He's the sunrise. The light is breaking. It's not too late. But you have to open up. You have to let him in. You have to stop performing and start receiving. You have to surrender the pride and embrace the vulnerability. You have to choose life over comfort. And you have to do it now, not someday. Not when you feel more ready. Not after you get your life together. Now. Because now is all you have. Now is all any of us have. If you've read all the way to the end of this 4-part message, you're marked. You know you are. You can feel it. So here's what I'm asking you to do right now. 1. Type your declaration, I'm marked and I'm all in the comments. Let it be your stake in the ground. 2. Share this message with at least 5 people over 50 who you know are settling for less than God's best. Don't worry about whether they'll be offended. Plant the seed. Let God water it. 3. Start tomorrow morning. Set that alarm right now. 30 minutes earlier. No excuses. No, I'll start Monday. Tomorrow, December 18th, 2025. Day 1 of your 30-day encounter challenge. 4. Report back. As you go through this challenge, come back to these videos and share what's happening. Your testimony will encourage others. Your breakthrough will inspire faith. Your story will be part of what God uses to reach the next person who needs to hear this. And if you do this, if you really do this with genuine desperation, I promise you on January 16th, 2026, you will not be the same person you are today. You will have encountered the living God in ways that transform everything. I'll leave you with both, just like Jesus gave me both. The warning: time is short. The window is closing. You've been marked, but you have to respond. If you ignore this stirring one more time, if you scroll past this message and go back to business as usual, the opportunity might not come around again. Not because God gives up on you, but because you'll have trained yourself to ignore his voice, and each time it gets easier to do so until eventually you can't hear it anymore even when you want to. The hope: it's not too late. It doesn't matter how long you've been withering. It doesn't matter how much time you've wasted. It doesn't matter how far you've drifted. Jesus specializes in resurrection. He breathes life into dead things. And if you'll just open yourself up to him, really open, no pretense, no performance, just raw honesty and desperate hunger, he will meet you. He will fill you. He will resurrect everything in you that's been dying. That meadow full of wildflowers is still there, about 15 miles outside the city. The boulder is still there. The sunrise still happens every morning. But Jesus isn't limited to that location. He's in your living room right now. He's been standing beside you this entire time you've been reading this, waiting to see if you'll finally turn toward him, Will you? Will you be one of the glowing flowers, one of the revived ones, one of the marked ones who actually responded? Or will you be one who felt the stirring and ignored it, one who let pride and fear and comfort rob you of the breakthrough that was within reach? The choice is yours, but choose quickly, because time is shorter than you think, and Jesus is waiting. I'm marked, I'm desperate, I'm all in. Are you? If this message has impacted you, if you feel that stirring in your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, declare it, act on it. Your breakthrough isn't just for you, it's for everyone your life will touch once you're walking in the fullness of what Jesus died to give you. Let's watch God move in the final days of 2025. Let's watch a generation wake up. Let's watch the withered flowers come back to life. It starts with you, right now, today. Type, I'm marked and I'm all in if you're ready. The clock is ticking, but grace is still available. Choose life.